Johan Bijou George, what do you think about Netanyahu's statement regarding protecting Druze in Jaramana, Damascus? Well, compare that to what he's doing with the minorities in occupied Palestine, right? Benjamin Netanyahu has a state called Israel. They have a minority of the original indigenous people called Palestinians. He massacred over 60,000 in the past year and a half. So much for protecting minorities, or Israel protecting minorities. It's a desperate attempt from Israel. Firstly, Israel wants to portray this image that we are in control and we're threatening. The Syrian administration, the new Syrian administration, whether they're preparing for something against Israel or not, that's in the realm of the unknown. Their statement said they don't want war. So are they preparing? Is it all, we don't know. Their moves so far led to Israel translating all of that as signs of weaknesses. On the ground, despite the Israeli calls to protect some of the Druze community inside of Syria, the administration in Syria are continuing their plans. For example, Jaramana, the forces of the government are in Jaramana, and also they are being welcomed by the population. And let me share a video with you. These are the Druze in Jaramana. Okay? Netanyahu saying I have to protect them. They're cheering for the government forces coming in Jaramana. Why and what happened? So let me tell you what happened so you can understand. Well, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to play on the side of minorities, especially with the Druze. Although the Druze community, it's not like you can be conclusive about the Druze community. Yes, they succeeded in having deals with their spiritual leaders in historical Palestine that led to conscription, which is similar to the Jewish people inside of Israel. And they participate in the army, but there are still voices who are against that from within, and there is fierce resistance from the Druze of the Golan Heights that have been occupied for over 50 years. And many statements that are coming from spiritual leaders in Syria are refusing all of this, saying we're Syrians. And historically, the Druze population in Syria, they were like other Syrians too. They fought for their independence. They fought against French attempts to divide Syria. The French at the time, I mean, in the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century, they tried to have a small Alawite state and divide Syria based on different kind of sects. The Druze were one of the communities that opposed that, by the way. Now, does it mean that all of them are like that? And no, there are exclusions. There are exclusions. Israel just injected 3 million to the Druze community, or some people within the community, and so they published that in Israel. There was a warning coming from a man called Walid Jumblat, who is the most senior Druze politician in Lebanon, and he had a press conference this evening only for the purpose of warning from an Israeli hellish plan in Syria to support, anyone from within the Druze community who's willing to play ball with Israel. Clearly, there are few who might be able or might want to do that, like some might exist from other communities too. So the most important thing is to not get dragged into a sectarian tone, because that's what the enemies want. And this proves that no, the actual Druze population, they are in Syria. No, they are very supportive of a united Syria. They want their state to be one. And here they're supporting the government forces inside Jaramana, where this whole chaos started. And how did it start, by the way? There were armed groups inside of this location that, according to some in the community, were unknown, and they were hiding, and they started attacks and what have you. Now, the state is actually starting to implement things on the ground, despite of Israeli threats and anyone threatening, by the way. They told everyone all of the arms will be in the hands of the state. It doesn't matter where you are. And they were going with their armed forces in Jaramana, and there was a clash with one of these groups, to a level where the spiritual leaders in Jaramana said, no, here are the criminals, come and take them, because they killed one of the government forces. Again, this debunks the whole, you know, doom and gloom prophets online who are telling you about this, all of the sectarian war in Syria and what have you. That doesn't exist, and the enemies of the Syrians are those who want that, and that's where people shouldn't fall for it. Now, does this mean that the threat is gone? No, the threat is not gone. Israel is in Syria. Israel is occupying Syrian territories. Again, did the new Syrian administration, just that's it, is selling out Syria to Israel? Did they allow them to go in and to keep them there? The statements are saying, no, they have to retreat. And the more time goes by, the Syrian foreign minister, he just said a couple of days ago that no, Israel shouldn't just withdraw from Syrian territory, they should withdraw from the Golan Heights, because the Golan Heights are occupied. That's being met with Israeli arrogance and with Israeli threats. And we also need to understand why is Netanyahu choosing to have these escalations too. It's also to run away from the humiliation and defeat in Gaza. Netanyahu started to escalate in Lebanon, the full-blown Lebanon war, with Lebanon moving from a front to a country that is participant in a war. All of that escalation happened when the streets were at a boiling point against Benjamin Netanyahu, and there were talks already about just overthrowing Netanyahu, because you start to have record numbers of people protesting, get a deal, get it over and done with, we can't wait any longer, you're lying, and they're dying. He went on a full-scale war with Lebanon. He diffused some of the tensions, and the protests indeed got down, because all of a sudden we were at a front with Lebanon, only for him to reach a temporary ceasefire within 2 months in Lebanon to justify the ceasefire that would happen in Gaza after that, slowly climb down the tree without appearing to be climbing down the tree. And he's also having these escalations with Syria. Does that mean that he actually is doing that only for Gaza? No, they have interests in Syria, they have interests in Jordan, they have interests in Egypt and in Saudi Arabia too, and in Iraq, by the way. Israel has a plan in Syria to not only capture parts of the south of Syria, they have plans to go from the south, stretching all the way to the borders with Jordan, down to SDF-controlled territories. But they're faced with American resistance here, because the United States is officially like on the way of getting out. And Turkey is just having a bigger offensive against SDF, although SDF started to have a change of tone, although Abdullah Öcalan, who is the leader, the main leader of the primarily Kurdish armed movements, just said, you know, no, that's it, we need to take down the arms and we need a peaceful resolution. Turkey is not relying on that. Likewise with Syria, they're keen on having all of Syria united in one front. The Syrian president, AL-SHARAA, he was in Latakia and Tartus, who are considered to be hubs of the previous regime, and he was welcomed with masses, like thousands, more than these people, thousands of people cheering him and supporting him in these areas too, again debunking the narrative that some are pushing for. But now he's also facing Israel. Are they preparing, or is it going to be a new reality? Well, fact of the matter is, Israel is occupying Syrian territories. Apart from the Golan Heights, they're occupying more Syrian territories. The visibly weak response coming from the Syrian administration is leaving a lot of doubt. It's casting doubt as if, you know, what are your genuine interests? However, what we do need to know is, we're just 2 or 3 months in all of this. Are things going to escalate? Is something going to happen? What's Turkey going to do in the background? There's a big talk about that. What is Russia going to do? The new administration is talking both with Russia and Turkey. And on the ground, they are still going ahead despite the threats of Israel. Like with these scenes, what did Israel say? Benjamin Netanyahu, actually. He said, any attack on our Druze brothers and sisters, acting like, the Druze are all one and they all love Netanyahu, like some of those sellouts inside of Israel who sold their whole communities to go and die for this genocidal entity. He said, we're going to crack down if they touch them. Well, they're there and they're being celebrated and supported. And the government in Syria, the administration in Syria is having a united approach. I mean, the dialogue, the conference of dialogue, they are, everyone represented, all minorities in Syria, a Christian, and AL-SHARAA himself saying, we come from different backgrounds, so we want to focus on rebuilding Syria together, presentation, feedback, what have you. All of that was still early days, However, there's a big problem, and that big problem is Israel. How is the new administration going to deal with them, and what kind of way forward are they projecting? All of that is going to come in the near weeks or months. Eventually, we're going to see the reality of everything, right? Whether you support or are against, What we try and do here is analyze based on the information that's given on the ground inside of Syria.